For 60 long years Mary and Daniel lived together in a small quiet house at the edge of their peaceful town where everyone believed they knew every story that touched the couple's life. Their home stood under a wide old oak tree whose branches stretched across the roof like arms that had guarded their memories since the first day they moved in. Neighbors often spoke about them with warm smiles because they seemed like the perfect example of love that survived every season. Daniel believed the same because he trusted Mary with every part of his heart. He never imagined she could keep anything hidden from him after so many years together. Yet in the last few months, a strange silence began to grow around her, and he felt something unspoken moving between them like a shadow that refused to fade. Mary had grown weaker with each passing week. She spent most of her time sitting in a wooden chair near the window where she watched the garden as if she was searching for something only she could see. Her hands trembled slightly whenever she held her cup of tea. She still offered Daniel a soft smile, but it carried a sadness he had never seen before. He noticed her eyes lingered on memories he could not reach. He felt the distance in her voice each time she answered his questions with gentle but careful words. Daniel worried deeply, but he tried to stay strong because he believed love required patience. He believed she would speak when the time felt right. Every night he read old letters to her, hoping to bring comfort. Sometimes the letters made her eyes shine for a moment before the calm sadness returned. Daniel wondered what thoughts she carried inside her heart. At times he heard her whispering in her sleep. She spoke a name he did not recognize, and the sound of it kept him awake until morning. He never questioned her directly because he feared the answer might open a door he was not ready to step through. Still the name stayed in his mind like a quiet echo he could not escape. Their life together had always been simple. They married young and built their world with patience and steady hands. Daniel remembered how Mary looked on their first day in the house with her calm voice and warm laugh that made his worries fall away. She never shared many details about her past, but he never pushed her because he believed the future mattered more than anything she might have carried before him. As the years passed, he often wondered about the silence she kept about her early life, but she seemed happy, and that was enough for him. Now as she grew weaker, her past began to rise again like a tide she could no longer hold back. One afternoon the doctor visited them and said her health was fading faster than they expected. He asked Daniel if Mary had shared everything about her medical history because some details did not match what he observed. Daniel felt confused because he had always trusted that she told him everything important. The doctor left with a worried look, and Daniel stood in the quiet doorway for a long moment trying to understand what he had just heard. When he walked back inside, he saw Mary sitting by the window again with her hands folded tightly in her lap as if she was trying to keep something from slipping out. He sat beside her and tried to speak with gentle words, but she turned her eyes away with tears forming at the edge of her lashes. He felt a deep ache in his heart because he knew something important was being kept from him and time was slipping from their hands. Days passed slowly, and the house grew quieter than ever before. Daniel followed every step of her routine with love and patience. He cooked her meals. He helped her walk from one room to another. He opened the windows each morning so she could breathe the fresh air that she always loved. Yet through all of this, she remained heavy with silence, as if her heart carried a truth that burrowed deeper each day. Daniel started to feel helpless. He wanted to reach into her sorrow and bring it out so they could face it together. Still, he did not want to pressure her. He believed that love meant waiting for the right moment. That moment finally came one early morning when Mary called his name in a voice softer than he had ever heard. Daniel rushed to her side and she asked him to sit very close to her because she needed to tell him something important before her strength disappeared completely. Daniel felt his chest tighten as he took her frail hand in his own. Her grip was surprisingly firm. She looked at him with eyes full of love and fear. She said she had lived with a truth she never wanted to share because she had believed it would hurt him deeply. She said she had carried this truth for so many years that it became a part of her, and she feared what would happen if it ever came to light. Daniel wanted to speak, but she pressed his hand gently and asked him to listen without interruption. She reached into the drawer beside her bed and took out a small tin box. Daniel had seen it many times over the years, but she never allowed him to open it, and he never asked why. She placed it in his hands, and told him to open it now because it held the story she could no longer hide. Inside the box he found old folded papers, faded photographs, and a simple silver ring worn thin by time. Daniel looked at the ring with confusion because he had never seen Mary wear it or mention anything about it. The photographs showed a younger Mary standing beside a man Daniel did not know. Her smile in the picture was real and bright, yet her eyes looked slightly guarded, as if she was unsure of something. Daniel felt a strange tension rise inside him as he turned the photograph slowly in his hand. Mary told him the man in the picture was her first husband. Daniel felt the air shift around him as he tried to process her words. For years he had believed he was her only companion in life. Now he realized she had lived another chapter before him, a chapter he had never known existed. Mary explained that the marriage had been brief and full of fear. She said her first husband was not a gentleman and their life together became difficult in ways she could not handle. She said she left her old town after he disappeared under mysterious circumstances. No one ever found him, and Mary lived with the fear that he might return someday. She moved away with only the ring and a few memories she wished she could erase. She said she changed her entire identity because she wanted to build a new life far from the shadows of that past. Daniel sat in silence, feeling his heartbeat slow and heavy. He did not judge her. Instead, he tried to understand the pain she carried inside her heart all these years. Mary said she wanted to tell him the truth many times, but she feared he would think she had betrayed him by hiding such an important part of her life. Daniel reached for her hand again and held it gently. But before he could say anything, she whispered that there was something even more important inside the box. Something she had never told anyone. Something that explained why she always feared her past would return. She said her first husband did not vanish by accident. She whispered that she knew exactly what happened to him, but she never spoke about it because she was afraid the truth would destroy everything she built with Daniel. Her voice grew weaker and her breath shortened as she tried to continue. She told Daniel that the papers inside the box held the final piece of the story and that he would understand everything once he read them. She said she wished she had been brave enough to tell him earlier, but she only wanted to protect his peace. Before Daniel could open the papers, Mary closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering the last bit of strength she had left. Daniel felt fear rise inside him because he knew he stood on the edge of a truth that could change his entire life. Daniel sat beside Mary holding the tin box with shaking hands. The morning light entered the room slowly and touched her pale face with a soft glow. He watched her struggle for breath and felt a fear he could not describe. He wanted to open the papers inside the box, yet he did not want to let go of her hand because he felt she might slip away if he looked away even for a moment. Mary told him to read the papers soon because they carried the truth she could no longer speak. Daniel gently placed the box on his lap and touched her forehead with his hand, wishing he could take away the pain that had surrounded her for so long. After a long pause, he opened the folded papers inside the box. The first paper was yellow with age and written in Mary's handwriting. It was a letter addressed to herself. The words were filled with fear and questions from a younger Mary who seemed lost and unsure of her future. She wrote about her first husband, whose name Daniel now read for the first time. She said he had changed after their marriage and became someone she could not understand. She wrote about nights filled with tension and days filled with confusion. She wrote that she wanted to run away, but she did not know how to live alone. Daniel felt sadness as he read her words because he imagined a young Mary trying to survive a life she never wanted. The second paper was a document from her old town. It said her first husband had been reported missing many years ago. The investigation had ended without answers. It mentioned strange signs in their old home and no trace of his belongings. Daniel read the document with a heavy heart because he sensed Mary had carried fear from this moment for her entire life. He tried to imagine her leaving that town with only a small bag and a heart full of questions. She had buried that chapter, but it had never stopped haunting her. Beside him, Mary opened her eyes slightly and whispered his name. Daniel leaned close and she told him again that she never wanted to hide anything from him because she loved him more than anyone in the world. She said she had lived with the fear that one day her past would return and take away the peaceful life they had created. Daniel assured her with gentle words, but her breathing was too weak for long conversation. She asked him to continue reading because the final paper inside the box held the answer he needed. Daniel reached for the last folded sheet. It was thicker than the others and sealed with old tape. He opened it carefully. Inside he found a statement written by someone named Clara who had been Mary's neighbor in her old town. Clara wrote about a night when she heard loud noises from Mary's house. She said she saw Mary leave the house in fear. She said she saw Mary's husband follow her into the back garden. Clara wrote that she was too scared to call for help. She had watched from her window as the two of them argued under the dim light of the garden. Then the lights went out and Clara could no longer see anything. When morning came, Mary's husband was gone. Clara wrote that she never told anyone because she feared she might be blamed. Daniel finished reading and sat still for a long moment. The story in front of him explained Mary's silence, but it also raised more questions. He looked at her and asked softly what happened that night. Mary opened her eyes again, and tears gathered at the corner of her lashes. She spoke slowly and told him that her first husband had become angry and tried to force her back into the house. She said he grabbed her and she tried to free herself. She said she pushed him away in panic, and he lost his balance near the edge of the garden where the ground was uneven. He fell and did not move again. Mary whispered that she did not understand what happened at first. She tried to wake him, but he stayed still. Fear filled her heart and she thought no one would believe it had been an accident. She left that night with shaking hands and a heart filled with guilt. Daniel listened to her, every word, feeling his chest grow tight with emotion. Mary said she had lived with that memory for so long and never found the courage to speak about it. She said she had built a new life with Daniel to escape the fear and guilt that had followed her. She said she always planned to tell him, but every year she hesitated because she did not want him to see her as someone who carried such a painful secret. Daniel held her hand gently and told her she should have trusted him with the truth. Mary said she knew, but she feared losing him more than anything else. Daniel looked through the papers again and realized everything had happened before they met. The investigation had ended. The past had closed itself. The only person who carried the memory was Mary. He felt deep sadness for the young woman she had been, and for the fear she had lived with all these years. He told her that she had suffered alone for too long. Mary smiled faintly and said his presence had healed parts of her heart even when she could not tell him everything. She said their life together was the greatest gift she ever received. Daniel sat beside her for hours holding her hand. He thought about their 60 years together, their quiet mornings, their shared meals, their evening walks, their laughter over small moments, their patience with each other through hard times. He realized that the secret she kept had not erased the love they built. He understood that she had lived with guilt, but she had also lived with kindness and care. He felt a deeper love for her now because he saw the pain behind her gentle smile all those years. Later that evening the doctor returned for a checkup. Daniel stayed close as the doctor examined her. The doctor explained that Mary's condition was reaching its final stage. Daniel felt his heart break, but he held himself together for her sake. After the doctor left, Mary asked Daniel to sit with her near the window because she wanted to see the garden one more time. He helped her sit up and supported her gently. They watched the sunlight fade behind the oak tree that had stood beside them for so many years. Mary spoke again in a soft voice. She told Daniel that she had one more request. She wanted him to forgive her fully, even if the truth had shaken him. She said she wanted to leave the world knowing his heart stayed peaceful. Daniel assured her that he forgave her completely. He said he loved her with all his soul and nothing could erase the life they shared. Mary touched his cheek with trembling fingers and smiled. Night fell quietly around them. The room filled with soft shadows and the gentle sound of wind touching the windows. Daniel stayed awake beside her, listening to her slow breathing. He thought about the long journey they had lived together. He thought about her bravery and her sorrow. He thought about the strength she carried inside her heart. As he watched her rest, he realized that the truth did not weaken their bond. It only revealed how deeply she had cared for him. Mary opened her eyes once more, and whispered his name with love that had lasted a lifetime. She said she was tired and ready to rest. Daniel held her hand, and promised he would stay beside her. The room grew still as her breathing became slower. Daniel felt the weight of the moment settle around him. He did not want to lose her, but he knew her time was near. The truth had finally been spoken. Yet Daniel sensed there was something more hidden beneath her words. Something she had not fully explained. Something she could not say in her weakened state. He wondered if the box held more than he realized, or if Mary wanted him to discover something after she was gone. He stayed by her side through the night, as questions slowly formed in his heart. The night moved slowly as Daniel stayed beside Mary, holding her hand and watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. The room was quiet except for the soft rustle of the curtains when the wind touched the window. Daniel felt a deep sadness inside his heart because he knew the end was near. Still he prayed silently for more time. He wanted to ask her so many questions, but he could not bring himself to disturb her rest. Every sound seemed too loud in the stillness surrounding them. He looked at the tin box again and wondered if the papers inside truly held the full truth, or if Mary had kept one last secret hidden from him. Hours passed before morning light slowly filled the room. Mary opened her eyes with effort and looked at Daniel with a weak smile. He leaned closer and she whispered that she wanted him to listen carefully. Her voice trembled, but she spoke with calm strength. She said she had told him the truth about her first husband and the night she escaped. She said she had carried guilt for many years. Still she added that there was another secret inside her heart, but she had not found the strength to speak it last night. Daniel felt his breath catch as he listened. He held her hand more firmly and asked her gently what the secret was. She took a slow breath as if gathering energy from the quiet morning air. Mary said that the papers in the tin box told only part of the story. She said there was something more that she had never written down because the memory was too heavy. She believed Daniel deserved to know everything before she left the world. Daniel felt fear rise inside him, but he stayed silent so she could continue. She told him that after her first husband fell and did not move, she did not understand what to do. She panicked and cried in the garden for a long time. She thought someone would come. She thought someone would help her. But hours passed, and she remained alone. She said she finally gathered her courage and left the place because she feared she would be blamed for something she never wanted. Daniel listened slowly, trying to understand her pain. Mary said the real secret was not what happened that night, but what happened weeks later when she learned something she never told anyone. She heard through someone in her old town that her first husband had debts and trouble with a few dangerous people. She heard that he had been threatened before he disappeared. She heard that others believed he might have run away to escape his problems. She even heard that some believed he had fought with someone else before the night she left. She said she lived all these years unsure if she was responsible for his final fate, or if someone else had taken advantage of the moment. She never knew the full truth, and that uncertainty lived inside her heart like a shadow that followed her everywhere. Daniel felt his heart soften. He realized Mary had lived with confusion and fear for decades. She had not hidden her secret to deceive him. She had hidden it because she never understood it herself. She had carried the weight alone because she did not want to burden him with a past filled with unanswered questions. He stroked her hand gently and told her he understood her pain. Mary closed her eyes in relief because she had finally spoken the truth she feared the most. Her breathing weakened again, and Daniel helped her rest her head on the pillow. She whispered that she loved him deeply and that she had kept going all these years because his presence gave her strength. She said he had been her peace through every storm inside her heart. Daniel felt tears gather in his eyes as he listened. He wanted to speak, but his voice broke. Mary squeezed his hand lightly and told him he did not need to say anything. She already knew his heart. Later that afternoon, Mary drifted into a quiet sleep. Daniel stayed beside her reading the papers again and again. He traced the lines of the photographs and the handwriting on the letters. He tried to piece together the truth from every fragment she had left behind. He realized the story was more complex than he first believed. It was not a simple accident or a simple escape. It was a life filled with uncertainty and silent fear. He understood now why she wanted to build a new identity. Why she wanted nothing to remind her of her past. Why she held on to him so tightly through the years. Her quietness was not distance. It was protection. Evening arrived and the room dimmed slowly. Daniel lit a small lamp near her bed and continued to watch her with steady eyes. Suddenly Mary opened her eyes again. She looked at Daniel with clarity he had not seen in days. She asked him to bring the tin box closer. Daniel placed it near her and she touched it with fragile fingers. She said there was something at the bottom of the box that Daniel had not noticed yet. Daniel searched inside and found a small folded cloth hidden beneath the papers. Inside the cloth he found a locket with a tiny engraving on its surface. He had never seen it before. The engraving was a date and a single initial. Daniel looked at Mary, waiting for her to explain. Mary said the locket belonged to her first husband. She said she had taken it the night she left because she wanted to remember the good side of him before everything changed. She said she kept the locket because she believed it might hold the final answer. Daniel opened the locket slowly and found a small piece of paper inside. The writing was faded but still readable. It was a note written by her first husband. The message said he had been threatened and followed. He wrote that if anything happened to him, Mary should not blame herself because he had made mistakes that finally caught up with him. He wrote that he loved her though he had not shown it well. Daniel felt his heart twist as he read the note. This note changed everything. It suggested Mary may not have been responsible for anything that night. It explained why she lived in fear and why she never understood the truth. She had believed the weight was hers alone when in reality the situation had been shaped by many forces she could not control. Daniel took Mary's hand and told her that she had suffered without reason for years. He said she had lived with guilt she never deserved. Mary smiled weakly as she listened. She said the note had given her comfort when she read it for the first time many years ago, but she still feared telling Daniel because she did not want to reopen old wounds or bring confusion into their peaceful home. She said she now felt ready to let go because she had shared everything with him. Her heart felt lighter and she felt she could rest without fear. Daniel sat beside her for a long time, holding her hand as the night grew darker. The lamp cast a warm glow over her face and he watched her slowly drift toward sleep again. He whispered that he loved her more now than ever. Mary's hand rested lightly in his. Her breathing softened. The room felt still and gentle as if the entire world paused to honor her strength. Hours passed until the sound of her breath grew slower. Daniel felt the change in the air before he heard the silence. He leaned close and whispered her name. She did not respond. Her hand loosened in his, and her face relaxed into peaceful calm. Mary had taken her final breath with the truth finally lifted from her heart. Daniel remained beside her for a long time, unable to move. Tears fell quietly, but he felt no anger. He felt sorrow mixed with deep tenderness. He knew she had lived a hard past, but she had given him a life full of love and gentle moments. He knew her secrets had not been meant to hurt him. They were wounds she carried alone because she believed she was protecting him. He kissed her forehead softly and whispered a final goodbye. Yet even through the pain he sensed there was still one last mystery hiding in the papers and the locket. Something he had not yet understood. Something she had hoped he would uncover after she was gone. Daniel sat beside Mary's still form long after her final breath left the room. The quiet of the house felt heavier than he had ever known. The oak tree outside moved gently in the evening wind and its branches cast soft shadows across the floor. Daniel felt as if time had stopped and everything familiar had shifted into a world he no longer understood. He held Mary's hand even though it had grown cold because letting go felt like turning away from the life they had shared. He whispered her name once more, hoping he might hear her voice reply with the same warm tone he had loved for 60 years. But the silence remained, and it cut through his heart with painful clarity. Eventually the doctor arrived and confirmed what Daniel already knew. The doctor spoke kindly and encouraged him to take time to rest, but Daniel could not bring himself to move. After the doctor left, the house returned to a silence that seemed almost alive. Daniel stood slowly and walked toward the window where he looked at the garden Mary loved so much. He thought about her childhood memories she never shared. He thought about her quiet smiles and the gentle humor she kept for special moments. He thought about the secrets she finally revealed at the end, and how brave she had been to speak them through her weakness. He realized he knew Mary better now in her absence than he had known her in many of their living years. The tin box rested on the bedside table, and the sight of it pulled Daniel from his thoughts. He sat down again and opened it carefully. He looked at the papers one by one. He touched the photographs. He read the letters in her handwriting. He opened the locket with a note written by her first husband. Each item felt like a piece of a puzzle he had lived beside without noticing. Daniel wondered if the note had been meant as a warning or a confession. He wondered if Mary had believed the words or if she lived uncertain because she never found a clear ending to the story. Daniel felt a new sense of responsibility settle into his heart. He wanted to understand everything because Mary deserved to rest with full peace. Days passed slowly after Mary's funeral. The house felt too large and the silence felt colder than before. Daniel woke each morning expecting to hear Mary's voice calling his name, but each day began quietly. He walked through the rooms and touched the things she left behind. Every corner of the house carried her presence. Her books on the shelf. Her knitting basket near the chair. Her favorite cup on the kitchen table. Daniel felt as if she might return any moment, yet he knew she was gone. To carry his grief, he returned again and again to the tin box because it was the last piece of her story he could still hold. One afternoon, while reading the papers again, Daniel noticed something he had overlooked before. On the back of Clara's statement, the neighbor had written a short note addressed to Mary. The note said she had seen something else the night Mary fled, but had been too frightened to speak of it. Clara wrote that she believed someone had entered the garden after Mary left. She heard footsteps hours after the house fell silent. She said she saw a shadow near the gate, but she could not see who it was. She wrote that she hoped Mary found peace, and that the truth might one day reveal itself. Daniel felt chills rise along his arms as he read the new lines. This changed everything. It meant someone else had entered the garden after Mary left. It meant her first husband might not have remained alone after his fall. It meant the entire truth had been clouded by fear and confusion. Daniel realized Mary may have suffered guilt for no reason at all. He felt sadness knowing she had carried that burden without knowing this part of the story. He wished he had seen the note before she passed, so he could have told her in time. Yet now the only thing he could do was honor her memory by searching for the answers she never found. Days turned into weeks and Daniel began to gather every detail he could. He reached out to people from Mary's old town. Some remembered her with kindness. Others barely remembered the events of that time. A few old residents told him that her first husband had been involved in trouble that might have led dangerous people to him. Daniel listened carefully and took notes. As he collected more information, he began to sense a clear pattern. There were rumors that Mary's husband had enemies. There were whispers that he had been warned before. There were stories of others being watched during that time. Daniel realized the truth was larger than Mary ever understood. During this time, Daniel spent many evenings sitting by the old oak tree in their garden. He watched the sky change colors and thought about Mary's life. He imagined her walking through the same garden when she was young and full of hope. He imagined her carrying dreams that later became tangled in fear. He imagined her choosing to leave her past behind so she could build a life with him. Every memory brought both comfort and pain. He missed her voice. He missed her quiet laugh. He missed her gentle patience even when he made mistakes. He missed the simple moments that formed the heart of their life. One evening, as Daniel sat under the tree holding the locket, he made a decision. He would visit her old town. He wanted to stand in the places she once stood. He wanted to see the garden where her life changed forever. He wanted to understand her pain not through papers and stories but through seeing the truth with his own eyes. He believed this journey would give him closure. He believed it would honor her memory. He believed it would help him carry the years they shared with deeper understanding. When Daniel arrived in the old town, it felt frozen in time. The streets were narrow and lined with old houses. The air carried a quiet stillness. He walked slowly until he reached the house where Mary once lived. The garden was overgrown and the fence was broken. Daniel stepped carefully inside. He stood near the spot Clara had described. He imagined Mary running in fear. He imagined her falling to her knees. He imagined her standing again with shaking hands as she made the decision that changed her life. He felt tears rise in his eyes as he whispered a soft apology for the burden she carried. Daniel walked around the garden and inspected the ground. He found nothing but old soil and scattered leaves. He stood near the gate and looked around. Then he noticed the faint outline of something half buried in the earth near the fence. He knelt down and brushed away the dirt. It was a small metal piece shaped like a button. It looked unusual, and Daniel sensed it might have belonged to someone who entered the garden that night. He held it carefully and felt a strange weight in his heart. This small object might be the final proof that Mary had been innocent all along. Daniel carried the object back home. Though it held no clear answers, it gave him peace. It confirmed that Mary was not the only person in the garden that night. It confirmed that she had never needed to carry the guilt she held inside for decades. Daniel felt sorrow knowing he could not tell her this truth while she lived, but he also felt comfort knowing he understood her heart more deeply now. As the months passed, Daniel found strength in the memories they shared. He planted flowers in the garden Mary loved. He kept the tin box on a shelf near his chair. Sometimes he opened it to read her letters or look at the photographs. Each time he felt closer to her. He realized their 60 years together were built not on perfect truth, but on love that grew stronger through every hidden fear and every quiet moment. Daniel knew he had discovered the real secret. It was not about the past she feared. It was about the love she protected. The truth was that Mary spent her whole life trying to shield him from pain. She carried her burden alone because she wanted him to live in peace. Daniel understood now that her long silence was not weakness. It was strength born from love. One morning as Daniel sat under the oak tree, he smiled softly. He felt Mary's presence in the gentle wind. He realized their story did not end with her final breath. It continued in the lessons she left behind. It lived in the love that filled their home. It lived in the memories that shaped his days. Daniel closed his eyes and whispered a quiet promise that he would live the rest of his life, honoring the truth he had finally learned. Their 60 years together had been a journey of love, fear, healing, and discovery. And in the end, Daniel understood the most important truth of all. Mary had never been trying to hide from him. She had been trying to protect him. And that made her love stronger than any secret she ever carried.